Thanks for joining me, Michael. I was going to do a little intro there. You've been with Pan American for over 20 years and president and CEO since 2016, right? So you've developed mines across South America, from exploration to operation, with your background in corporate finance and a doctorate in geology. So you got sort of both sides of the same coin. Now, you've just had the big deal with acquiring the Yamana assets. Maybe you could go through a bit about how you're digesting that, what's the future looking like with some of those mines you acquired?
Sure, and thanks for having me. I'm sorry, I'm at the end of a very long marketing trip, so I'm losing my voice here. We put a few slides, just a couple slides up. Pan Am, obviously, a very large company, a lot of active mines. Right now, there are 11 mines we're running. We announced the sale of our mine Lada in Peru, which is coming to its end. And I would assume that will close later this week. So down to 10 operations across the Americas, as you said. Look, the acquisition of Yamana, the Yamana assets in Latin America have been incredible for us, obviously.
Right.
You know, it was a strong target always on the M&A side. It's in our backyard, producing silver and gold, more gold than silver, but still a great mix and long life, some very long life assets, especially Jacobina in Brazil. Being able to acquire those assets when gold was sitting at $1,750, $1,800 gold, you can imagine, that those were profitable assets at that metal price. So fast forward now to today's prices, you see the result in our financials when you look at Q3 and $151 million free cash flow in one quarter, $236 million operational cash flow. So very, very strong financial result, and that's obviously driven by the combination of the assets, but also driven by this acquisition. So integration worked out really well. It wasn't actually very difficult. I think we found that people, how they worked on the sites were really similar to us, a bit different maybe in the head office, and that we were able to harvest about $60 million of synergies a year, which is pretty amazing. But on the side, really, no changes made. Integrate people in our decentralized structure and give them kind of the stripes, if you want to say like that, and let them go. And the results speak for themselves. We have increased production, and at the same time, we have been able to streamline our portfolio and sell quite a few assets in the last 12 months. If you've seen, we netted just about $1 billion in cash from streamlining assets, selling assets that are not important to us at this point, either earlier exploration assets or metals that we don't want to mine. So a lot of cash coming back with that, and also for really strong royalties.
Right. Do you have any plans for the investments in some of these ones if you have acquired through the Yamana with some of the sales from the other ones? Do you want to go through some of the projects perhaps and discuss next steps of any of them?
Sure. I mean, if you look at capital allocation, which is one part of, or a big part of a CEO's job in the mining industry,
right.
I hope. Obviously, for that, you need to make cash. And, I think we're in a very, very strong position here to do so. And when I look at it, it's really paying back debt. Keeping a strong balance sheet has always been incredibly important to us. You need to have that flexibility to react to opportunity. Like the Yamana one, if you recall, just quickly for people who are not familiar with it, was actually in a sales process with Goldfields. And we came in together with Agnico Eagle in the last minute and broke that deal up. And things like that you can only do if you have a very strong balance sheet, react quickly. So keep low debt. We took on some debt for the transaction, but paid the short-term debt all back already with the cash that came in from the sales of the non-core assets. So that's one really important part. Return to shareholders, very important. I think this year we probably returned around $170 million between dividend and share buybacks to our shareholders. But at the end of the day, people don't buy Pan American shares for the dividend, they buy it for growth. And so important projects that we add to our portfolio, either internally or externally, with that capital. generates, of course, most upside and most wealth for our shareholders.
Are there any particular jurisdictions you'd like to expand into with this strong base in Latin America?
Yeah, look, I mean, we are all across the Americas. We have
Yeah.
2 mines in Ontario as well.
Yeah.
And we're very comfortable with that. I spent all my life in Latin America, either living there, working there for sure. That's really the place I know, speak languages. I know the people there. And I think that's incredibly important. Going to new places that you're not familiar with was very difficult. There's obviously many places with higher geopolitical risks than being in Canada. So you have to understand where you are and what you're doing. At the end, this company started as a silver company, and you go where the silver is, and the silver is in the Cordillera. Most of the silver projects are somewhere from southern Patagonia all the way up to Alaska along the Cordillera. So that's why we are there. And of course, we kind of diversified a bit into gold. And so the mines that are further east produce normally more gold. Yeah.
Can you talk more about the jurisdictions you're in? I mean, there's been a lot of talk during the conference about President Milei in Argentina, and how have you seen the landscape there change?
Yeah, look, I'm working in Argentina for a long time.
Yeah.
Probably not exactly as long as Ross, but close to that time. And Argentina has been incredibly difficult in the past. Right?
Yeah, he's got some stories,
Yeah, and we have, we built there actually Manantial Espejo, which is now mined out, is in closure. Cerro Moro is still in production for us there. You see it on the map. And we have still Navidad, the biggest undeveloped silver deposit in the world, which is far down south. And Chubut, obviously, a ban on open pit mining is preventing us to go forward with that project at this point. Look, I think having Milei there has been very positive for Argentina. On the investment side, of course, Argentina goes through a hard time right now. It had to. But let's hope that will continue. Milei can continue his plans and changes to Argentina. I'm maybe a bit more careful after all these years in Argentina and want to see more changes before I will go back with sizable investments in Argentina.
Okay.
But at the moment, we don't have really a project ready, as I can't build Navidad in Argentina. So I don't have to ask myself the question, should I invest in Mexico, Brazil, or Argentina? At the moment, we are investing in Brazil and Mexico, and not in Argentina because I don't have a development.
What about the ban? Do you see it being removed under him?
It's Argentina is, there's the federal side, and then you have the local, the province, and the provinces, they have a lot of power. Obviously, they make that decision, so it's not really Milei who can make that decision.
Okay, right. So it's a bit of a, you got to navigate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then how's your outlook then on the M&A landscape now? You've been through some of these, the big deals. You still see it lasting longer because the metal prices is pretty high?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're always looking around. You have to, as a mining company, we are dealing with finite resources. So you do a lot of brownfield exploration. We spend about $100 million a year in brownfield exploration, replacing our reserves, trying to find growth internally, which we have been incredibly successful finding a world-class deposit below our La Colorada mine in Mexico. So this is the biggest value creation we can do. But looking around in the M&A space there, it's really the question, how do you structure an accretive transaction? We have seen many dilutive transactions in the 2010, 11, 12 range. And I think demotivated a lot of the generalists to come into our space. And I think as an industry, we are doing way better now. But this is really important. We cannot just grow because we want to be a bigger company. It has to be accretive. And to structure that in a way that happens and everybody can see that is not always easy. But if it's possible, by all means, I'm there with our balance sheet to do a deal.
Right, and so you talked a bit about balancing risk and reward. I guess maybe you can explain a bit more on it, because you're saying, Brazil, Mexico, looking good for maybe not Argentina for now. The new president in Mexico seems to be less anti-mining than the former Obrador or AMLO. How do you assess it there? Yeah,
look, I mean, and again, I just want to finish with Argentina. Look, I understand that people are really excited about Argentina. It's just, I would be, if I could build Navidad, I probably would be excited to to go in and start building something. But at the moment, for us, it's just business as usual. Running Cerro Moro and trying to optimize that mine. But as I said, I think we've now seen decades and decades of not very business-friendly governments in Argentina, and now a change for less than a year, doesn't change all the picture.
So hold the horses, let's see what happens really. How much
I think it's very positive,
accomplish.
but yeah, I want to sit and wait a bit, but I can really, understand why some people want to go, because you have to find a good project, and now is the time to find it. Once everybody is in the country, and I have seen that in my career with Peru, with Mexico, once everybody is there, it's kind of impossible to get that accretive transaction. So if you want to go into Argentina and buy something now, it's probably the time. We already have the projects there that we need, so I don't need to buy a new one.
Right, and how you mentioned it before, the locals control some of the mine approvals on the local level there. So how divorced from the federal politics is that? Does it really change on the local level? Does the federal parties have any kind of control on the local level?
Yeah,
any sway there?
It depends quite a lot. Well, first of all, Argentina is quite different. When you look at northern Argentina, with a lot of mining, it's quite different. It seems quite a bit easier to develop a project in northern Argentina. Southern Argentina, a bit less so. Chubut obviously doesn't have mining right now. Santa Cruz, a bit further, the province further to the south where we are, it's a lot of mining.
Right.
With a lot of very large Canadian mining companies there. So it's really a local issue. And of course, it depends a bit if the governors and the federals are in line with their views on mining. Sometimes it happens, sometimes not. But at the end, they're really the provincial decisions.
Okay, now you're growing a project in Mexico, La Colorada.
Right.
Can you explain a bit about what's going on there? You've had some really good drill results recently. I think in August you had was it 400 or 568 grams silver per ton there, over 78 meters basically. How's that looking?
Yeah, we found La Colorada is our biggest silver producer. We had a lot of issues over the last 3 years there until we rebuilt our ventilation system. It's now all up and running, and we are back at the normal tonnage throughput there. There's limestones below, and now my geologist comes back, but there are limestones below, and I was always looking for that skarn deposit, which there are more around in the region, and we just for many years couldn't really reach deep enough holes to get there. While we developed the mine further to the east, we got access, and we drilled the first discovery hole in 2018, returned about 380 meters intercept of polymetallics. It's really a zinc, silver, lead deposit. It's the feeder zone for the high-grade silver veins that we are mining on top at La Colorada. So when you think above, we're mining high-grade, 2 to 3 meter wide veins, narrow main mining. Profitable mine, very profitable mine, but now suddenly you find a world-class deposit below. And that took a while. We drilled over 400,000 meters on that deposit by now. At the moment, the total resource stands at about 330 million tons.
Wow.
Very, very large deposit. And when you look at our technical study, it should turn out to be one of the larger silver mines in the world, but it will be, if not the largest zinc mine in the world.
And how's the local community there? What are the relations like with you and the government and the local government?
Well, obviously there are changes, and I wanted to get back to your question there on governments. What we are looking for are assets that have a long life. La Colorada skarn will be a multi-generational asset. Many, many governments will change during that time, like everywhere we are working. And so we work with all of them. Some are a bit different, some are a bit more left, a bit more right, be more business friendly, a bit less. At the end of the day, I think what the panel said just before about Ontario is obviously true across the world. This is generating a lot of revenue, a lot of jobs, a lot of wealth for local communities and federal governments, and that's not different anywhere else where we are working. But what it makes it a bit easier at La Colorada for the skarn is we already have a mine there, right? It's really a brownfield discovery and a brownfield development, so that's very different than going for for a really large, new deposit somewhere. And the second one, it's an underground mine. It's not an open pit.
So you're riding high prices in silver, kind of following gold maybe, but there's also an industrial component. Can you talk a bit about what's driving the silver price and how you're benefiting?
Yeah, it's quite different right now what we see, gold and silver. Obviously, gold at an all-time high, and everybody asks me why silver is not there. Well, there has been very little demand on the investment side for gold and silver. The gold price has really been pushed by central bank buying for a long time. We've seen inflows in the gold ETFs lately, so the investors are coming back. Still very timid, I would call it, on the silver side. For a long time, silver was somewhere around the $24, $25 range. And I think that's really kind of the floor now provided by the industrial offtake, which is growing every year.
And just explain a bit more about that, the solar power and high tech, what do you see happening there?
And, we had a chance to discuss that yesterday as well here in the panel. And when you look at silver now, about 60% is used in industrial offtake, mostly in electronics. And then the biggest one, of course, is solar panels. About 20 to 25% of all the silver production. But when you look at silver, it's I'm doing this for a long time. At the beginning of my career, nobody wanted to mine silver because it was a $2 metal, or $3 when you were lucky. But now you have all these modern uses that, electronics, healthcare, the clean energy production, electric cars, and then you go further, right? Because it is in electronic, obviously AI, networks, 5G, 6G, whatever comes later. All this componentry will need a lot of silver. So you can't do it without silver. And although we're all talking about copper for the electrification, there's a few other metals that are absolutely necessary, and silver is one of them. So that's why I think we saw a very, very strong industrial offtake, providing a new floor for the silver price. $25 is a pretty good floor, but now with the investors coming in, we see a bit more, but as I said, it's still very timid.
Now you were saying yesterday, was it the silver is the glue and copper is the highway, and in sort of industrial use? So is it not, the price is not really reflecting the demand that is there?
Well, as I said, look, this is growing very quickly. When you look at solar panels, I think it's about a threefold growth in less than 4 years. If that continues, there's still, when you look at the silver market, it's a simple calculation. Let's call it 850 million ounces from mine production, pretty stable, very difficult to increase at short term. Maybe 100 to 150 million tons from recycling. That can go up and down with the price, of course. And then on the demand side, as I said, about 60% of that for electronics, all kind of industrial offtake. 20 to 25% goes in jewelry. That's a very stable number as well. And it's increasing while gold price increases as gold jewelry increases so much in cost. So the rest is really the investor that can play with that. And that number it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? We have kind of a very similar output from the mine side every year, but this really, really fast increase in demand from the technology side. And we need less and less investor demand to actually kick in and create these big spikes.
But shouldn't there be a push for investor demand? Shouldn't the industry try to promote that? Because maybe for some investors, gold is too expensive to get into as an investment. I mean, for some people, perhaps. Yeah. Those would be retail investors, I guess, low level, but.
Yeah, and as I said, look, this is quite a long trip for me, that 2.5 weeks of meetings every day, talking to investors in many, many places in the world. And there is very, very much, kind of an awakening interest on the silver side. A lot of people just have a question. They still don't understand the market, have a lot of questions, how this is really working, where's the silver going, how does that look in the future? But it's, my story is always the same. It's a very easy one to tell, because when you look at electronics, clean energy generation, electrification, and the last we didn't talk about is healthcare with the strong antibacterial behavior that silver have. I just can't see why we use less silver in the future in any of those
kind of puzzling. Yeah, but maybe what's not puzzling is maybe your plan for next year as we wrap up. what are your, maybe some touch points that your milestones that you want to hit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're looking at the final result on an optimization study on Jacobina. We want to increase production there. Final numbers and size and capital required for that will come out next year. We, of course, advanced La Colorada skarn. It's a gigantic deposit. It has a lot of base metals in it. So we're looking for a partner, and we're talking to quite a few very large companies about that, to partner up on that deposit to cover some of the base metals that are in there. And we benefiting from it's about 17 million ounce silver a year production from that place. And the rest is really just, getting our assets ready, continue to work on all of them, improve them, and provide the silver that is needed to the world. We are the second largest primary producer in the world, and have the largest reserve and resource, and will continue to do so.
That's fantastic. Anthony, maybe there's some questions from the audience?
Right here in the front.
Pan American Silver and Ross Beatty in particular have done a hell of a lot to support the mining industry in Argentina. You referenced some potential changes with the government. What would be the three things that the government of Argentina could do to make Argentina a top jurisdiction for international mining?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Why is it so difficult in Argentina? Well, when you look back, we had incredible clampdown and control on flow of capital. That has been very, very difficult. So you have not been able to take money out of Argentina for a long time. That has changed, and that's really the first thing. I mean, and look, and I like that discussion before, and people talked about how much money goes back to society. And look, I think it's 100% that goes back, actually, because what goes back to the company actually goes to shareholders, which are retirees or people working all over the world. So all that money is actually going back, but it's not always in the same country, right? So that 30% that we talked about maybe goes 1 year from Argentina to Mexico, 1 year from Mexico to Brazil, then from Brazil back to Argentina. My job is not to accumulate a lot of cash. My job is to grow the company and provide more wealth for shareholders, communities, countries, etc. So if you bring money in and you can never take it out, well, that makes it very difficult. So that's now getting better, and I think that's number one, absolutely number one change in the country. There's lots of other things, labor laws, etc., but I think this is really one of the big ones. Let's have a free, in that sense, dollar exchange, and then everything will be much easier. We are not exactly there yet, but we are getting there for sure.
But Argentina is probably a more secure jurisdiction now, whereas Mexico is likely to be unsettled under the Trump administration.
Yeah, could be. Look, as I said, we have the largest silver deposit in the world in Argentina. So if Argentina gets to the right spot, we have the balance sheet to start developing, and if you get the go ahead.
It's arguable that you get no credit in terms of market capitalization for either Navidad or Cascabel. You've talked to Navidad. Could you talk to Cascabel a bit?
Escobal. Yes. Escobal in Guatemala. Sure. Escobal is still going through the consultation. So I agree with you that there's probably not a lot of value in the share price. Shouldn't have been anyway, because we didn't really pay for Escobal. If you think back to that transaction, which was at Tahoe, we paid $1 billion, which covered really, gave us La Arena and Chavindo in Peru and the 2 mines in Ontario. And Escobal was really a kind of a freebie, because it was already on care and maintenance. We structured a CVR, contingent value right, to pay for that asset once it's back in production, to de-risk the transaction. So that process of the consultation continues. Obviously, it's between the government and the indigenous group there, not with us. So I don't have really control over that. It's a little bit like in Argentina, where those are 2 huge catalysts in the company that I don't have really direct control. I work obviously there and discuss with people, And then we have the Mexican one at La Colorada with the skarn, which we have full control over it. Each of them is about similar. Each of them is about in the 20 to 25 million ounce potential silver production per year. So very large assets. So well worth my time and the team's time to work on those.
Yeah, I think you were just about to be asked about a question about the new president in Mexico and perhaps some of the changes that are perhaps happening at the moment. I think there was a change in the royalty rates in Mexico 10 days ago. Does this lead to some optimism of greater stability with regards to the international investment into Mexico? And how much is this related to their drive towards some more responsible mining?
Yeah, well, look, we are working in Mexico for many, many decades. So I've been happily working in Mexico under AMLO and will be happily working in Mexico under the new government. I mean, a lot of discussions on open pit mining. We will see that not a lot of open pit mines have been permitted under AMLO. I probably think that would be similar under the new government. I don't know if it's going to be, a full ban or not. I would probably not think so, but I think it will be project by project where you really have to show, the benefits and how you deal with the big open pit, the tailings, if it's a mine that produces tailings, and obviously the water. I think the water law obviously will be more restrictive, which is it's a great thing. We should look after the water. We have to look after water. By the way, La Colorada is producing a lot of clean water for the community. We actually have so much water in the mine that it's one of the big mining costs to pump that water. So we're not going to have the problem. So underground operations, I don't see any issue in Mexico really. Open pit may be a bit more difficult depending on where the project is located.
Thank you for the questions. Great stuff, Michael Steinman.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.